Alright guys, Cockerpunk here. Had a little fun video here that I'm making. I don't know if you call it a tipster video or not, but it's something I think all paintball players should know how to do, especially in the day and age where we all shoot electronic guns. Some people say mechanical engineers are afraid of electronics, and I say they're full of it, because I love electronics. What person wouldn't love electronics? They're awesome. Anyway, so if you saw my video on the Punkworks channel of this baby in slow motion, I found out after I clocked it, using the camera obviously, that it was only shooting about 11 BPS or 10 BPS, depending on the shot. And so I noticed that the problem wasn't that the gun wasn't keeping up, and the problem wasn't that the Apache wasn't keeping up. The problem was the warp feed was not shoving balls into the chamber quite fast enough. So what I've done here is, well, originally the warp feed was designed to run on 6 volts. Just 2 pairs of AA batteries, so 4 AA batteries. That ends up being 6 volts. But because AGD is so smart, they designed the board and the programming to run it on the warp feed to go up to 18 volts. So mine was originally only run off 1 9-volt. We're going to make a setup to make it run 2 9-volts, and we're going to max out that warp feed. So stay tuned. Alright, so what we need for soldering here is obviously a handy dandy soldering iron. Watch out, these things get hot, and they take a long time to get hot, so you gotta wait for them. This is just a little baby one. This should be plenty of soldering power for any paintball needs. We've got just a stick of solder here. This stuff looks like wire, but it's actually made out of lead primarily. And then here's what we're going to be soldering together, just as an example here. 2 9-volt connectors. I got a few spares. And one thing that is to die for when you're working on electronic things is a voltmeter or a digital multimeter. My digital ran out of batteries, so I'm running with the old analog. We can rock it old school here. So the first thing you're going to do when you want to solder 2 wires together is make a mechanical connection. This is a trick I learned from an old friend of mine who got into mechatronics, which is like robotics. And so what we're going to do is, these are the 2 wires we want to connect together, and so we put a little hook on them, right? Hook them together like that, and then see if you can grab those tabs and twist them together. Now, you saw me do a connection much like this. See, it's a mechanical connection here, it's real strong. Now, you saw me do a connection like this back on the Angel LCD, how I fixed the LCD. Unfortunately, I didn't have a soldering iron up at my apartment, but I have a soldering iron here. So this in many ways can fix a broken wire already. It's a mechanical connection, but you can see it kind of gets loose and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some solder in there to ensure that the electrical connection always stays there. It'll also help reinforce the mechanical connection too. So alright guys, so we got our soldering iron and our part to be soldered and our solder. So what we're going to do is, again, make sure we don't try and burn ourselves. Lay out the piece of wire here, preferably over maybe a piece of wood or something. This right here, this is plastic. I don't know if you can see that smoke, but this is made out of plastic and it just burns on the soldering iron. Whereas wood is a little bit, it doesn't melt. It'll char a little bit, but not too bad. So all I'm doing there is just putting the tip of the soldering iron onto the bare wires. Now what I'm going to do here is be very careful and see, if we touch the solder to the soldering iron, it just boils away. So what we want is the soldering iron to get the wires nice and hot, like they are right now. See? You can see that little bead of solder, hopefully. Now, come on, get hot again. Whoop. Yep. You can see that little bead of solder melting into the wire. So, let me show you. So, perfect. So, hopefully you can see right there, I've soldered together those 2 pieces. Now they are stiff and they won't loosen up. There's a really good electrical connection in there as well because of the lead, and that should do it. Now, one thing you want to do is, if you're soldering a wire repair like this, you're going to want to use some handy dandy electrical tape to make sure that we don't cause a short in our gun. because it ended up in the end that I had to get a new board for my Angel anyway because I didn't do this. So what you do, you just get some electrical tape and wrap up your solder connection. This way those bare wires can't touch your board, touch the side of your gun, because your gun is a conductor if it's raw. You know, we don't want hot electrical leads inside your gun because they could go out at any time. Not necessarily dangerous, but it'll probably cost you money, and we don't want that. Alright, well, this allows us to make some rather interesting paintball parts. This right here is a 18-volt adapter for a warp feed. I've just soldered together 3 of those 9-volt connectors, so I'm going to run 2 9-volts instead of 1 9-volt on the warp feed. If you guys saw that video on Punkworks there, I clocked it and my gun was only shooting like 11 BPS. And so I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not because the Apache's not keeping up, and that's not because the gun isn't keeping up, that's because the warp feed can't keep up. So I'm going to cram more volts in it. It's rated to 18, so it should be alright. So, I got my meter here so we can prove that it actually works. Like I said, it's really nice to have a meter. Right now, I'll flip it on 10. These old analogs are usually not auto-ranging, so, whoop, wrong way. Alright, so we can see, we're rocking about 8 volts there. I hope you can see that anyway. Off of a relatively new 9-volt battery. So what I've got here are 2, relatively dead, anyway, rechargeable 9-volts. Because I like to use rechargeables if I can. That saves me a lot of money. Alright, and we'll watch this baby peg here. Alright, so we pegged the meter on the 10-volt setting. So we'll go up to the 50-volt setting. And you can see we're at about 14 volts. 14 volts. That should be alright. We should be able to see plenty of difference. So, got my handy-dandy warp-fed gun. Right, it runs off a single 9-volt battery, so let me get that plugged in for you. You can see how fast it runs. So, let's just see. So you can see the disc spin there. Now, this spin rate is directly proportional to how fast this gun is shooting, obviously. And so that's the reason why I'm doing this mod here. So, we'll detach that. We'll stick on our 14-volt source. Oop. If I don't put it on backwards. Now, you watch this baby roll. Woo! Now we're cooking with gas. Yeah, so that's kind of the handier side of what soldering allows us to do. Now, when you're soldering leads back onto a board or something like that, there'll usually be a pot there of solder, nice and made for you, and you just pull the wire out. Now, for that case, what you're going to want to do is trim the wire back from the broken lead. Trim the wire back so it's exposed here. And then, instead of pushing down on both wires, what you just do is put the soldering iron onto the puddle of solder on the board and melt it. Now, make sure that you don't spread that around, because if you spread it around, you'll create a short on your board. But once it's nice and melty, you can just shove the wire in there, let it cool off, and you're good to go. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. See ya.